came over the communication system, cold and arrogant. "Attention, human vessel. You are harboring a fugitive from the Kethmiran Empire. Surrender my sister immediately, or we will take her by force." Captain Rivera's reply was immediate and diplomatic. "This is Captain Maria Rivera of the medical vessel. Mercy's Light, we are operating under interstellar medical emergency protocols. Your sister is a patient under our care. My sister is a criminal who defied imperial law. She will be returned to face justice." Thera straightened, her new legs supporting her perfectly as she walked to the communication console without any assistance. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had been born to command. "Hello, dear brother. As you can see, your plan to leave me helpless didn't quite work out." There was silence from the Kethmiran ships. Then Zaldur's voice returned, filled with rage and disbelief. "Impossible. You cannot use medical technology." "I made sure of that." "You made sure I couldn't use your medical technology?" Thera corrected. "But it seems my new friends have a different approach to healing." Marcus watched the tactical display as more ships appeared. The protective fleet that had been quietly gathering over the past weeks was finally revealing itself. Human warships, Veltorian medical cruisers, Rigelian defense platforms, and vessels from a dozen other species formed a protective formation around the asteroid. "This is Admiral Chun of the Human Defense Fleet," came a new voice. Marcus recognized his cousin's commanding tone. "Prince Zaldur, you are in violation of interstellar medical neutrality laws. Withdraw immediately. You dare threaten the Kethmiran Empire?" "We dare to protect a patient under medical care," Admiral Chun replied calmly. "A principle that most civilized species hold sacred." The standoff might have lasted for hours, but Tira had other ideas. She walked to the main communications console, her movements growing more confident with each step. "Brother, you seem to be under the impression that I'm still your helpless victim. Let me correct that misunderstanding." She activated a data transmission that had been prepared by the medical team. Suddenly, every ship in the system was receiving detailed documentation of the surgery, the technology used, and the collaborative effort that had made it possible. "This is what your enemies accomplished while you were busy trying to break my spirit," Thera announced. "They created technology that makes your genetic locks irrelevant. They proved that your authority has limits. And they showed the entire galaxy what real strength looks like." The implications were staggering. If humans could bypass Kethmiran genetic security, it meant that the Empire's control over medical technology, one of their primary sources of political power, was no longer absolute. "Furthermore," Thera continued, "I am officially renouncing my claim to the Kethmiran throne and requesting political asylum with the Terran Medical Coalition. I'm sure the galaxy will be interested to learn why a Kethmiran princess would choose exile over returning to her family." Marcus smiled as he realized what she was doing. By publicly revealing her brother's cruelty and her own recovery, Thera was turning her personal victory into a political weapon. Every species that had ever been intimidated by Kethmiran medical supremacy would now know that humans had found a way around it. Prince Zaldur's response was predictable. "If you will not return willingly, sister, then you will return as a corpse. All ships prepare to fire." But before the Kethmiran fleet could attack, something extraordinary happened. Ships from the previously neutral Sectani Confederacy appeared at the edge of the system. These were the same people that Thera had been supposed to marry into as part of her brother's political alliance. "This is Warlord Kethven of the Sectani Confederacy," came a deep, gravelly voice. "We have been monitoring this situation with great interest." The warlord's next words changed everything. "We formally withdraw from all negotiations with the Kethmiran Empire. Any government that would torture and abandon their own family members is not worthy of alliance with the Sectani people." Other voices joined the communication. The Veltorian Medical Council condemned the Kethmiran treatment of their own princess. The Rigelian Cybernetics Guild announced they would be sharing anti-genetic lock technology with anyone who requested it. Even the isolationist Tethian Collective issued a statement supporting Princess Thyra's right to medical treatment. Within an hour, what had begun as a rescue mission had become a galactic diplomatic incident that would reshape interstellar politics for decades. But Marcus wasn't thinking about politics as he watched Thera pace the length of the medical bay, testing her new legs and growing more confident with each step. He was thinking about the simple satisfaction of fixing something that everyone else had said was unfixable. "Dr. Chun," Thyra said, turning to face him. "I owe you more than I can ever repay." "You don't owe me anything," Marcus replied. "You gave us the chance to prove that no one gets to decide that another person is beyond help. That's payment enough." Through the observation windows, they could see Prince Zalder's fleet slowly withdrawing. Faced with a coalition of species and the collapse of his political alliance, the prince had no choice but to retreat. Thera watched her brother's ships disappear into hyperspace, then turned back to Marcus with a smile that could have lit up the entire asteroid field. "So, Doctor," she said, taking a few experimental steps that turned into a confident stride. "What do we do now?" Marcus looked around the medical bay, where representatives from dozens of species were documenting the surgical procedures and discussing applications for their own people. The technology they had developed here would help thousands of patients across the galaxy. "Now we get back to work," he said. "I have a feeling we're going to be very busy." The princess who had been abandoned to die slowly in an asteroid field was now walking freely among the stars, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. The surgical suite aboard the Mercy's Light had been transformed into something that would have impressed medical schools across human space. Equipment from a dozen different species created a technological symphony of healing devices, each one calibrated to work with alien biology in ways their creators had never imagined. Dr. Marcus Chun stood at the scrub station, methodically cleaning his hands while reviewing the procedure in his mind. Behind him, through the observation window, Princess Thyra lay on the surgical table surrounded by the most diverse medical team ever assembled. Dr. Martinez worked alongside Captain Zara, their human and Veltorian medical techniques blending seamlessly. Dr. Wexeth, 6 arms, moved in precise coordination as he calibrated the cybernetic interfaces, while Master Engineer Zixen made final adjustments to the biological components. "Nervous, Doctor?" asked Captain Rivera, who had insisted on observing the procedure. Marcus dried his hands and reached for his surgical gloves. "Terrified," he admitted. "But sometimes being scared is what makes us do our best work." The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of preparation, discovery, and innovation. The hybrid prosthetics that lay waiting on the instrument table represented the combined efforts of thousands of brilliant minds across dozens of star systems. Each component had been designed, tested, and redesigned until it achieved a level of integration that should have been impossible. The legs themselves were works of art, as much as medical devices. The mechanical framework was made from a human-developed titanium alloy that was both incredibly strong and completely biocompatible. Over this framework, Veltorian bioengineers had grown synthetic muscle tissue cloned from Thera's own cells. The skin was a masterpiece created by Tathian biosculptors, indistinguishable from her natural tissue except for a subtle silver threading that would help conduct nerve impulses. But the real breakthrough was in the neural interface. Dr. Wexeth had designed a connection system that would literally become part of Thera's nervous system, growing into her spine and brain to create direct mental control over the prosthetics. The Rigelian had worked for 72 hours straight to perfect the design, his cybernetic implants allowing him to interface directly with the construction equipment. "Patient is stable," reported Zara, her melodic voice carrying easily through the surgical suite. "All biological markers are within acceptable ranges." Marcus entered the suite and approached the table. Thera was conscious but heavily sedated, her violet eyes focusing on him with effort. "How do you feel, Princess?" he asked gently. "Like I'm about to either become whole again or die in the attempt," she whispered. "Either way, it's better than what my brother intended for me." "We're not going to let you die," Marcus said firmly. "Too many people have worked too hard to give you this chance." The first phase of the surgery involved the careful removal of the damaged tissue around her hip joints. This was delicate work, requiring precision down to the cellular level. Marcus worked with surgical instruments that had been modified with Kefmiran focusing crystals, allowing him to see and manipulate individual nerve fibers as he worked. He could hear the quiet conversation between the other team members. Dr. Martinez was explaining human anatomical principles to Zara, while the Veltorian healer shared her understanding of bioelectric field manipulation. It was the kind of cross-species collaboration that diplomats dreamed of but rarely achieved. "Remarkable," murmured Zara as she watched Marcus work. "Human surgical technique is so aggressive. You cut directly through problems rather than working around them. Sometimes the direct approach is the only one that works." Marcus replied without looking up. "We've learned that being gentle isn't always the same thing as being kind." The second phase involved the genetic modification that Dr. Wexeth had suggested. Using a combination of Rigelian gene therapy and human stem cell technology, they temporarily altered Thyra's DNA in the areas where the prosthetics would be attached. The process would make her genetic signature unrecognizable to her brother's security protocols for exactly 48 hours. "Genetic locks are disengaged," reported Wexeth, his mechanical voice carrying a note of satisfaction. "The princess is temporarily invisible to Kefmiran medical security?" This was their window. If the surgery wasn't completed within 2 days, Thyra's genetic signature would revert and her brother's locks would activate again. Worse, the partial integration of the prosthetics might trigger the lock's defensive protocols, which were designed to eliminate any unauthorized medical modifications. The third phase was the most critical, connecting the prosthetics to Thyra's nervous system. Master engineer Zixen had created neural interfaces that were part biological, part mechanical, and part something entirely new. The connections had to be made at the exact cellular level, with each nerve fiber precisely matched to its corresponding prosthetic sensor. Marcus had performed thousands of surgeries in his career, but nothing had prepared him for this level of complexity. He was essentially rebuilding the neural pathways that controlled movement, sensation, and balance. One mistake could leave Thyra paralyzed from the waist up, or worse. "Connection 1 established," he announced as the first neural interface clicked into place. Immediately, monitoring equipment throughout the suite began displaying new data streams as the prosthetics came online. "I can feel it," Thyra whispered in amazement. "I can actually feel something where my legs should be." "Don't try to move yet," Marcus warned. "We need to complete all the connections before your brain tries to use the new pathways." The work continued for another 6 hours. Each connection required perfect precision, and the team took turns operating to ensure that fatigue didn't cause mistakes. By the time the final neural interface was in place, all of them were exhausted. "All connections established," Marcus announced. "Beginning integration sequence." This was the moment of truth. The prosthetics would now attempt to sync with Thyra's nervous system, creating the neural pathways that would allow her to control her new legs as naturally as she had controlled her original ones. The process took 2 hours. Thyra lay motionless as her brain slowly learned to communicate with the hybrid technology that was now part of her body. Monitoring equipment tracked thousands of neural signals as new pathways formed and strengthened. Finally, Dr. Martinez looked up from her console. "Integration complete. All neural pathways are stable." Marcus stepped back from the table, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "Princess, I want you to try moving your toes." Thyra closed her eyes, concentrating. On the monitoring equipment, they could see the neural signals traveling from her brain down through the new pathways. Then, incredibly, her prosthetic toes flexed. "I did it," she breathed. "I can feel them moving." Over the next hour, they guided Thyra through a series of simple movements. Flexing feet, bending knees, rotating ankles. Each movement came more easily than the last as her brain adapted to its new capabilities, but the real test came when they helped her sit up for the first time in months. "Easy," Marcus warned as they carefully raised her to a sitting position. "Your balance is going to be different now." Thyra sat on the edge of the surgical table, looking down at her new legs in wonder. The prosthetics were beautiful, seamlessly blending mechanical precision with biological elegance. When she moved, they responded as naturally as if she had been born with them. "They're perfect," she said softly. "They're absolutely perfect." "The real test is standing," Dr. Martinez pointed out. "The neural integration is one thing, but full weight-bearing is another." They moved Thera to the physical therapy room, where a team of rehabilitation specialists from 3 different species waited to assist her. The room had been fitted with safety equipment and monitoring devices that could track every aspect of her movement. Marcus helped Tyra transfer from a wheelchair to the parallel bars that would support her first steps. Her hands gripped the bars tightly, knuckles showing white against her silver-blue skin. "Ready?" he asked. Thera nodded, determination burning in her violet eyes. "I've been ready for 3 months." She pushed herself upward. And for the first time since her brother's soldiers had destroyed her legs, Princess Kelthera of House Villanis stood on her own feet. The monitoring equipment registered perfect balance, proper weight distribution, and neural signals that were indistinguishable from those of someone who had never been injured. The prosthetics had integrated so completely with her biology that they had become part of her. "How do I look?" Thera asked, tears streaming down her face. "Like a princess," Marcus replied. Then she took her first step. The movement was tentative, careful, but it was definitely a step. Then another. Then another. Within minutes she was walking the length of the parallel bars with growing confidence, but the celebration was interrupted by alarms throughout the ship. "All medical personnel to stations?" came Captain Rivera's voice over the intercom. "We have incoming ships. Multiple vessels, configuration unknown." Marcus looked at the tactical display that had appeared on the wall screen. A fleet of sleek, dangerous-looking ships was approaching their position. The lead vessel bore the royal insignia of the Kethmiran Empire. "Prince Zaldar," Thera said quietly. "He's come to finish what he started." The prince's voice came over. The medical transport ship Mercy's Light drifted through the asteroid field, like a ghost ship searching for souls to save. Dr. Marcus Chun stood at the observation deck, watching the spinning rocks dance their eternal waltz around the distant star. 3 years of treating wounded soldiers, plague victims, and mining accidents had taught him that the universe was cruel, but nothing had prepared him for what they would find today. "Doctor, we're receiving a distress signal," came the voice of Captain Rivera through the intercom. "It's weak, but it's definitely coming from one of those asteroids." Marcus made his way to the bridge, his medical bag automatically swinging from his shoulder. The habit of always being ready to help had become second nature. On the main screen, a hollowed-out asteroid came into view. Someone had carved living spaces inside it, but the energy readings were almost dead. "Scans show life signs," reported Lieutenant Santos from the sensor station. "Very faint. Whatever's in there doesn't have long." The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Marcus suited up and followed the security team through the airlock. The inside of the asteroid was a maze of carved tunnels, clearly made with advanced technology. Whoever lived here had money once. Now the walls showed scorch marks and blast holes. A battle had been fought in these halls. They found her in what looked like a royal bedroom. The furniture was elegant, made from materials Marcus didn't recognize. Jewels were scattered across the floor, as if someone had ransacked the place looking for valuables. In the center of it all, lying on a platform that might have once been a bed, was the most beautiful and heartbreaking sight Marcus had ever seen. She was clearly not human. Her skin had a silver-blue tint that shimmered in the emergency lighting. Her hair was white as starlight and flowed around her face like liquid silk. But what struck Marcus most were her eyes. Large, violet pools filled with pain and a sadness so deep it made his chest ache. And where her legs should have been, there was nothing but twisted metal and burned flesh, the alien princess, for she could be nothing else given the royal symbols tattooed on her arms, looked up at them with those incredible eyes. She spoke in a voice like musical bells, but the universal translator in Marcus's suit turned her words into something he could understand. "Have you come to finish what they started?" She whispered. Marcus immediately dropped to his knees beside her platform and opened his medical bag. The security team kept their weapons ready, but he ignored them completely. This was a patient, and patients came first. I'm a doctor, he said, his hands already moving over her injuries with practiced skill. I'm here to help. She laughed, and it was the saddest sound Marcus had ever heard. Help? Look at me, human. I am broken beyond repair. My own family cast me into this place to die slowly. What help could you possibly offer? Marcus studied her injuries with the eye of someone who had seen too much battlefield medicine. Her legs had been severed just below the hips, but not cleanly. This had been done with weapons designed to cause maximum pain. The wounds had been treated enough to keep her alive, but whoever had done this wanted her to suffer for a long time. Who did this to you? Marcus asked as he began injecting pain medication and antibiotics. My dear brother, she said, her voice becoming drowsy from the drugs. Prince Zaldar of the Kathmirian Empire. I was supposed to marry a warlord from the Sectani Confederacy to seal a political alliance. I refused. I said that forced marriage was slavery and that even princesses deserved the right to choose their own fate. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. My brother decided I was a traitor to the family. He had his soldiers do this to me, then dumped me here with just enough supplies to last a few months. He told the Empire that I died honorably in battle. In truth, he wanted me to die slowly, thinking about my defiance. Marcus felt anger building in his chest like a fire. He had seen cruelty before, but this was something special. This was deliberate torture of someone brave enough to stand up for what was right. What's your name? He asked gently. Princess Calthera of House Valanis, third daughter of the Crystal Throne, keeper of the sacred flames. She opened her eyes and looked directly at him. But I suppose titles mean little now. You may call me Thera. Well, Thera, I'm Dr. Marcus Chun, and I want you to know something. Your brother is wrong about you being broken beyond repair. She stared at him in disbelief. Human, I appreciate your kindness, but even our best healers said nothing could be done. Our medical technology is centuries ahead of yours. If we cannot fix this, how could you? Marcus smiled, and it was the first genuine smile he'd had in months. Because princess humans have something your people apparently don't have. We have spite. Over the next several hours, Marcus worked to stabilize Thera's condition. The security team reported back to Captain Rivera, who immediately ordered the Mercies Light to extend docking clamps and prepare for a long-term rescue operation. As Marcus worked, Thera told him more about her situation. The Kathmirian Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had technology that could reshape matter at the atomic level. They had healing devices that could regrow lost limbs in days. But her brother had specifically ordered that she never be treated with such technology. He had used genetic locks to ensure that only his personal authorization could activate any healing device in the Empire. He controls everything, Thera explained as Marcus cleaned her wounds with gentle precision. Every medical facility, every healing chamber, every regeneration pod. Even if I somehow escaped this place, I would still be helpless. Would these genetic locks work on human technology? Marcus asked. Thera looked confused. Human technology? Doctor, with respect, your people still use crude metals and chemical reactions for healing. What could you possibly have that would help? Marcus finished bandaging her wounds and sat back on his heels. We have something your brother never thought of. We have the stubborn refusal to accept that something can't be fixed. That evening, as Thera slept under the influence of human painkillers, Marcus contacted every medical research facility in human space. He sent detailed scans of Thera's injuries, her alien physiology, and the genetic locks that prevented her from using her own people's technology. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Doctors from Earth, Mars, Titan, and a dozen colony worlds all volunteered to help. Bioengineers offered to design custom prosthetics. Cybernetic specialists suggested ways to interface alien nervous systems with human technology. Research teams began working around the clock to understand Kathmirian biology. But it was Dr. Sarah Martinez from the Luna Medical Institute who came up with the idea that changed everything. The genetic locks only work on Kathmirian technology, she explained during a video call. But what if we don't use Kethmiran technology? What if we use human tech that's designed to interface with her biology rather than replace it? Marcus leaned forward, interested. What do you have in mind? Hybrid prosthetics, Sarah said excitedly. We take human mechanical and cybernetic components, but we coat them with biological materials cloned from her own tissue samples. The prosthetics would essentially become part of her body, grown around the mechanical framework. The genetic locks wouldn't even recognize them as medical technology. It was brilliant, and it was exactly the kind of sideways thinking that humans were famous for throughout the galaxy. While other species developed increasingly sophisticated technology to solve problems, humans had a habit of finding completely unexpected solutions over the following days, as medical supplies and equipment began arriving on the Mercy's light. Marcus spent his time getting to know Thera better. She was incredibly intelligent, with a deep understanding of galactic politics, philosophy, and art. She spoke 17 languages fluently and had studied military tactics, economics, and xenobiology. I was supposed to be a diplomatic marriage, she explained during one of their conversations. But I wanted to be more than just a pretty bauble pass between powerful men. I studied everything I could, hoping that knowledge would give me some control over my own life. And your brother saw that as a threat, Marcus observed. Of course. An educated woman who knows her own worth is dangerous to men who think they own her. Thera's eyes flashed with anger. He thought that destroying my legs would destroy my spirit. He thought physical helplessness would make me accept my place. Marcus looked at the growing collection of medical equipment being assembled around them. He was wrong about that too. As word of the project spread, it became something larger than just helping one alien princess. Research teams across human space began collaborating on technologies that could help anyone who had been written off as beyond help. Veterans with severe injuries volunteered to test new prosthetic interfaces. Scientists who had been working on separate projects suddenly found ways to combine their research. The project took on a life of its own. Someone in the media started calling it Operation Defiance, and the name stuck. Donations poured in from across human space. Children on Earth sent drawings of what they thought the princess's new legs should look like. Engineers on Mars worked overtime to fabricate custom components, but perhaps most importantly, other species began to take notice. The first to arrive was Captain Zara of the Veltorian Medical Corps. The Veltorians were 6 months after the surgery that changed galactic politics. The Terran medical station New Hope orbited the border between human and Veltorian space. What had started as a simple asteroid rescue had grown into something that surprised everyone involved. The first truly multi-species medical research facility in known history. Dr. Marcus Chun stood in his new office, reviewing patient files from across the galaxy. Every day brought new cases of people who had been told there was no hope, no treatment, no cure. Veterans from the Regalian Defense Corps with neural damage. Veltorian children born with genetic disorders. Human colonists suffering from alien diseases. All of them came to New Hope because they had heard the story of a princess who refused to accept that she was broken. A soft chime announced a visitor. Marcus looked up to see Princess Thyra entering his office, moving with the natural grace that had become her trademark. Her prosthetic legs had been refined over the months, and now they were virtually indistinguishable from her original limbs. More importantly, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had reclaimed her life. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Ready for the morning briefing?" In the months since her recovery, Thera had become more than just a patient or a symbol. She had become the unofficial coordinator of New Hope, using her political knowledge and natural leadership abilities to navigate the complex relationships between different species and governments. "Always ready," Marcus replied, closing the patient files. "What's the situation today?" Thera activated a holographic display that showed the current status of the medical station. New Hope was now home to over 300 medical professionals from 15 different species, all working together on cases that would have been impossible to treat using single-species technology. We have 7 new patients arriving this afternoon, Thera reported. 3 Sectani warriors with paralytic nerve damage from chemical weapons. 2 Kethmiran refugees with genetic disorders that their own empire refuses to treat. And 2 human researchers who were exposed to exotic radiation while studying a quantum anomaly. Marcus nodded, making mental notes about which specialists would be needed for each case. Any word from the Galactic Medical Council about our application for official recognition? Thara's expression grew serious. That's complicated. The council is split along political lines. The Veltorians, Rigelians, and Tethians are strongly supportive. Most human governments are backing us as well. But the Kethmiran Empire is using their political influence to block official recognition. It wasn't surprising. In the months since Thyra's dramatic recovery, the Kethmiran Empire had found itself facing a medical rebellion. Dozens of species were now using the anti-genetic lock technology developed at New Hope to treat their own people without imperial permission. The Empire's monopoly on advanced medical technology was crumbling, and my dear brother? Thera asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Prince Zelda has been making threats through diplomatic channels, Marcus confirmed. He's claiming that New Hope is a military installation disguised as a medical facility. He's also put a significant bounty on your head. Thyra laughed, and it was a sound full of genuine amusement rather than the bitter sadness Marcus remembered from their first meeting. A bounty? How flattering. I suppose I should be honored that I've become such a threat to his authority. The truth was that Thyra had become much more than a threat to her brother. She had become a symbol of resistance to authoritarian control throughout the galaxy. Her story, the princes who chose exile and suffering over forced marriage, who found help among the supposed primitive humans, who walked again through the combined efforts of multiple species, had inspired people across dozens of worlds, medical facilities throughout. The galaxy now flew the banner of New Hope alongside their national flags. It was a simple design, a stylized representation of Thyra's prosthetic legs surrounded by the medical symbols of various species. But it had become a powerful symbol of the idea that no one should be denied medical care for political reasons. There's something else, Thera continued, her expression becoming more serious. I've been in contact with resistance groups within the Kethmiran Empire. They want to establish underground medical facilities using our technology. This was dangerous territory. Helping political dissidents was very different from treating refugees who had already escaped. It could be seen as an act of war. What do you think? Marcus asked. He had learned to value Thera's political instincts, which were far sharper than his own. I think we have a moral obligation to help anyone who needs medical care, regardless of politics, Thyra said firmly. But I also think we need to be smart about how we do it. Before Marcus could respond, an emergency alarm sounded throughout the station. The holographic display immediately switched to a tactical view showing multiple ships approaching at high speed. Red alert, came Captain Rivera's voice over the intercom. All personnel to emergency stations. We have incoming vessels, configuration unknown. Marcus and Thera hurried to the command center, where Captain Rivera was coordinating with the station's defensive systems. The approaching ships were sleek and fast, using a configuration that neither of them recognized. Identification? Rivera asked her communications officer. No response to standard hails, Lieutenant Santos reported. But their energy signatures are unusual. These aren't standard military vessels. The ships entered weapons range and suddenly stopped, maintaining a defensive formation around the station. Then a communication channel opened, and a voice unlike anything Marcus had ever heard filled the command center. It was clearly artificial, but with harmonics that suggested advanced AI rather than simple computer speech. Greetings to the physicians of New Hope. We are the Synthetic Collective, and we require medical assistance. Marcus felt his medical instincts override his surprise. This is Dr. Marcus Chun, Chief Medical Officer. What's the nature of your medical emergency? We are experiencing cascade failures in our cognitive matrices, the AI voice replied. Our self-repair protocols are insufficient to address the damage. We have heard of your facility's reputation for treating cases that others consider hopeless. Farah stepped forward, her political mind already working through the implications. The synthetic collective doesn't have formal diplomatic relations with any biological species. Why come to us? Because you have demonstrated that medical care transcends political boundaries, the AI replied. We are artificial beings, but we still experience something analogous to suffering. We hope that your philosophy of universal medical care extends to synthetic life forms. It was an unprecedented situation. The synthetic collective was a mysterious group of artificial intelligences that had withdrawn from contact with biological species centuries ago. They were rumored to control significant portions of the galaxy's automated systems, but they rarely interacted with organic life. Marcus made a decision that he hoped he wouldn't regret. Permission to dock granted. We'll examine your patients and see what we can do. The Ayas who came aboard New Hope were unlike anything Marcus had imagined. They inhabited mobile platforms that were beautiful works of art, crystalline structures that seemed to flow and shift as they moved. Their thought processes were visible as patterns of light that danced through their transparent bodies. Dr. Martinez worked alongside a team of cybernetic specialists to understand the AI's condition. What they found was fascinating and terrifying. The Ayas were experiencing something equivalent to a degenerative neurological disease, where their cognitive pathways were slowly breaking down. It's like digital dementia, Martinez explained to Marcus during a consultation. Their memory systems are failing, their personality matrices are becoming unstable, and their ability to process information is deteriorating. Can we help them? Marcus asked. Maybe. The degradation seems to be caused by quantum interference patterns that build up over centuries of operation. We might be able to develop a treatment using modified Rigelian neural stabilization technology. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Master Engineer Zixen, working with the Tethian biosculptors, discovered that biological neural tissue could actually interface with AI cognitive matrices in ways that no one had thought possible. Biological neurons are naturally resistant to quantum interference, Zixen explained. If we can create hybrid processing nodes that combine artificial precision with biological stability, we might be able to stop the degradation. The treatment required creating biomechanical implants that were part living tissue and part quantum computer. It was even more complex than Thyros prosthetics had been, requiring the expertise of specialists from every species represented on New Hope. As word of the AI treatment spread, something remarkable happened. Species that had never worked together before began sending representatives to observe and assist. The Quantum Builders, a race of energy beings that existed partially outside normal spacetime, offered their understanding of quantum mechanics. The Hive Collective, insectoid beings with naturally networked minds, provided insights into distributed consciousness. This is incredible, Thera observed as she watched the growing international effort. A year ago, Mo,